going, guys? This is Jose Trujillo once again, coming to you from the art studio with another awesome video. And today, I want to talk to you about why I believe painting, creating artwork, and in my case painting, in your case, I don't know, maybe you create different stuff, artwork. Creating artwork is confidence, okay? Creating artwork is confidence, it is trust. It really comes down to that, for me. This has been my experience. As I mentioned in other videos, I believe it has to do with momentum. That's why you guys see me creating artwork at a certain pace. You know, it's just the way I create artwork. That doesn't mean that that's the way to create artwork, but that's how I do it. Other people have their pace is different, but it's the same thing. They create this momentum happening. You know, this ongoing cause and effect. Now, I think why do I think that it's confidence? Throughout the years when I started, before I started creating artwork, I started doodling or whatever. Before I started making paintings. I want to make it as broad as possible, but I'm just going to talk about paintings. Before I started making paintings, I started to realize that there was days where I felt very, very much in flow, very inspired, and then there was days that I wasn't. But I didn't know what it was, right? After a few years that I became more I guess prolific at it, I started realizing that there was a certain something that was more created a sort of ease when I was painting. And I'm not talking about some happiness or no, it went beyond. Sometimes I didn't even want to paint. Like I didn't want to go to the studio, and I just happened to, get into the studio, have a little, spare time, and I started creating artwork. Kind of forced myself, to go into the studio and creating artwork, and I realized that there was a momentum happening. There was, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Like, what is it? What is it that I can create artwork some days where it feels like I'm flowing, and then other days it feels like I'm just like, it's so hard, so difficult. What is it? And I tried explaining myself in different ways. I mean, this really is what people call the artistic process, but I call it differently. I call it a lot of excuses and a lot of complaining. The reason I call it this is because it can really drown you if you don't know what you're doing. It can really drown you if you don't have the right knowledge. And I don't mean knowledge as in, theoretical, but if you notice a lot of artists that shadow artists learn certain things that would have taken them, the learning curve is so sometimes so large that if you shadow an artist, you realize certain things that are like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes total sense, right? But if you didn't shadow that artist, it would probably have taken you, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years down the road to kind of get that. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about certain things that really you can't really teach them, like theoretically. They wouldn't make sense, and you're like, oh yeah, but you have to see them and then you have to do them in order for them to really manifest, let's call it that. And I realized that every time that I created artwork, when I was in flow, I was confident. That's really what it was. I was confident. And there's also certain things happening, right? Your mind is at rest. There's a certain peace associated with it. But more than anything, I felt, every time I felt inspired, I felt that I was trustful, I was confident, and this damn fly. And so how do you get there, right? How do you get there? This is one of the reasons why I've talked to you guys over and over about just showing up to the studio. You have to just go into the studio. You don't want to wait for the muse, right? You don't want to wait to be inspired. You don't want to, if you do that, that's great, if that's your cup of tea, right? But if you're a working artist and you're serious about taking your artwork to the next level, whatever that is for you, whether it's exhibiting, selling your work, I don't know what it is, licensing your work or taking more photographs, I don't know what your thing is. I assume it's painting because I make painting videos, so I assume that, people that like to paint watch my videos. But it's you'll find out that there's a level of confidence associated with it, and that's because you know something. This is something that I've barely started learning. I couldn't trigger it, at will. I thought I did, but I couldn't trigger it at will. I had ideas about it. I was like, well, it really just comes down to action. The whole thing is action. No matter how you put it, no matter where you put it, the whole thing is action. There's ways to get inspired. Yes, there's different ways, different techniques that people do, and all of that. And I will be talking about some of that stuff more in depth later. But it really just comes down to, you know something, you truly know something, not just you imagine or you practice a little bit and you kind of know. No, when you know something, there's a level of confidence that comes in, and that confidence is really what you are inspired at will. That's what gets you, rolling. And I've noticed that many of us artists, we tend to think that we can only do really well when we're inspired. And I think it's the other way around. I think that first you go in, you show up and you work, you do your work, and in that working, in that action, you create a momentum, right? And you start feeling positive, and you start feeling capable, and then you start trusting. You start trusting your movement, your hands, your eyes. You start zoning in, you start focusing, and then you get into the zone. And then all kinds of magic happens when you do that. But first that needs to happen, and it might not be your first painting. It might not be an hour. It might take longer than an hour. It might take, I don't know. That's why many of us, we've experienced as artists, that we really become more inspired, 5, 6, 7 hours into working. We're like, maybe 2-3 hours, whatever it is for you, into it. Then you really start getting all the juices. I think that's one of the reasons why there's so many quotes about Picasso and how he worked and all of that. I think he figured that out as well. He was very prolific, so he spent a lot of time creating artwork. I'll leave you with that, you guys. Painting is confidence. In order to get confident, you must devote time and effort, practice. Whatever that is for you. I don't know if it's 10 minutes a day, an hour a day, or whatever it is. But you have to put in the time and the effort. All right, this is the world's greatest living artist. I'll leave you with that. Take care.